All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from in the world. We're going to start kind of slow here today and give a few more people time to join the session if they want to, and then we'll kick it off here in just a few minutes. So while we're just sort of hanging out here, why doesn't everybody put in the chat where they're joining from, and we can see what kind of an audience we've got. We're putting mine in here right now if I can type. I can't type. Sanford, Michigan, where it is 41 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy, wet, windy, typical October, in other words. But there's no wildfires.
There you go. Yeah, we need the rain around here in Portland to put out the wildfires. That's what we're anxiously awaiting, for some fresh rain.
We're on our third day of rain this week. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Bill will get rain Friday.
Yep. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started then, and people can trickle in as they join us. So welcome to another community conversation hosted by your Autodesk community. I'm Chris, and I'm going to be your host today, and it's my pleasure once again to welcome Phil, who's going to be telling you everything you ever wanted to know about Fusion 360. So just a little bit about our series here. Community Conversations are virtual meetups featuring expert speakers from across the community. Sessions range from deep dives, tips and tricks, live demonstrations on products like AutoCAD, Revit, Dynamo, and Fusion 360, of course, to roundtables on industry insights, emerging trends, career stories, and so much more. As always, we put up our safe harbor statement at the beginning of these, just to let you know that if any forward-looking statements are made during this session, these are not meant to be made as promises of any future enhancements or of anything that's going to actually happen with the product. So if you're making any purchasing decisions, always look at the product as it is today, not based on something that you might hear in this session. To get started, we have a few housekeeping things. Our lines are muted to reduce background noise, but if you have a comment, this is a conversation, so we invite you to put your hand up in the Zoom window or put a question in the chat, and we will call on you to unmute yourself, and we'll have a back and forth going here. We are recording the session, and the session will be posted when it's available to the event page and YouTube. Like I said earlier, we'll do some quick introductions here. My name is Chris Benner. I'm the Community Manager for Product Design and Manufacturing here with Autodesk. I have been with Autodesk just over 2 years now and come from a background of machine design for the last 25 or so years, using primarily Autodesk products. I started doing machine design on AutoCAD 9, if that tells you anything. And got involved in the community a few years back, became an expert elite and an Autodesk University speaker, and finally decided it was time to cross over to the dark side and join Autodesk and work for the community. So I'm going to hand it off now to Phil and let him take the rest of the session, and I will be back at the end with some more sheets of links and resources for everybody so that you can get more involved in the community. So Phil.
Hi, everybody. My name is Phil Eichmiller. I currently work as a QA engineer for Fusion 360. I have so for 10 years now. Joined the Fusion team from the customer world. I was a designer and in manufacturing here in the Portland area using Inventor for many years. I've also taught at Portland Community College for almost 15 years now. So I have a lot of experience teaching, a lot of experience using Inventor, AutoCAD, Illustrator, all kinds of tools to get things made. And when I had the pleasure and a privilege of joining the Fusion team, I got to become a tool maker. And I'm quite proud of that and happy to tell you everything I know about Fusion 360, which is going to primarily be on the modeling side. So things to do with drawings, design, a little bit of simulation, not real big on the CAM side, or electronics, if that's what you're here for. But I'll do my best because I do know where to find the answers as well. So glad to be here and looking forward to the conversation. All right, so I guess I'll, if it's appropriate, I can share my screen. I did want to just start off before I get into any sort of any of the items that we have teed up to discuss today. I'd rather deal with your questions. So I see we have a couple of people on the line here. So is there anything that you'd like to ask? Did this? Hopefully I'm saying your name correct.
I could throw in a question.
Okay, Martin.
If it's a hard pass, no worries, but I'm very curious about crossover into the architectural and building design space. If there's some applications or workflows where Fusion 360 might have a nice place with an architectural office.
Well, that's a good question, and I think that at this point, I mean, it would be a relatively difficult workflow to connect Fusion with something like Revit, right? I don't know of a Revit model to Fusion interaction that works very well, and on the other side of that too, you know, architectural development is done in an application that specifically sort of takes details and kind of ignores them and turns them into formulaic things for drawing. So Revit for architecture is those models would be way too involved for a Fusion or an Inventor to open up. Just like the models in Fusion and Inventor are actually way too detailed for Revit to open up. They're just detailed in different ways. So what you would get out of a Revit model, for instance, if it was opened in Fusion, would be hundreds and hundreds of pieces of things like 2x4s and the walls and the things like that, that Fusion is going to start going, well, if I'm going to manufacture this thing, I need to know where every square millimeter of this thing is down to a few thousandths of a millimeter. And that's like a lot of detail for a manufacturing program to try to consume the output of a architectural program. So making them talk together isn't really a workflow that exists today. I don't even think using any CAD that would work very well or at all. That said, you know, a lot of architecture firms have mechanical designers on hand, right? So that you have people with multiple disciplines that can make welded railings, right? A lot of architectural details would show up as, you know, actual manufactured metal objects. Also, if you look at how curtain walls are designed, some companies use Inventor to do curtain walls, where you would take the information from, you know, Revit and turn it into an Inventor model for manufacturing, you know, highly controlled manufacturing aspects of making curtain wall chunks. Fusion is not going to do real well there either, because Fusion doesn't have part libraries. So there isn't a way to keep track of a couple of hundred different fasteners that you might use, or standard components that you might use. There really isn't a way to do that and use a library system like you would for Inventor or even Revit for doing the same kind of work. So I would limit the use of Fusion, you know, in a realistic sense. I mean, you want to have the right tool for the job, right? So if you're doing architectural work and you want to include Fusion in the workflow, you would be thinking of things that can be made by people who cut and fasten metal together, for lack of a better description. Obviously, it could include any sort of materials, but on an architectural scale, you're talking welded railings, details that would go around stairs. You know, you might even design doors in Fusion. You could easily do doors because doors have just a limited number of elements and limited amount of like hardware variability. So that's where I would go with that. I think the output though would be, you would still end up outputting from Fusion and then having to consume it in another product, which sort of defeats the cloudiness of Fusion. But Fusion can operate in a non-cloud world. So, you know, getting something out of Fusion and into another application is relatively easy.
Thanks.
Yeah. Did that answer your questions about it entirely?
Yeah, I was also just kind of thinking if there's any opportunity for very early conceptual design involvement, because not trying to turn Fusion 360 into a BIM program, but is there any opportunities for very loose conceptual design thinking?
I'd say so. I mean, that's what Fusion is really good at. It's just a matter of how do you connect that? Like, how do you want to get something out of Fusion and into another application? So I'm being very specific in my description here about having connected workflows where the data stays at the center, which is kind of the desire these days. Fusion has, you can design things. I have models that are 1 kilometer across. I've made little chunks of cities. I've made conceptual buildings. I've made the Khufu pyramid. I did the pyramids of Giza, right? I did that to scale. So, if you can do the pyramids of Giza to scale, I think you could do conceptual architecture if you want. There's certainly plenty of modeling tools in Fusion that can do it, and you can change your units to be meters or yards or feet or miles or whatever you want. So you could do that. You would just probably at the end of the day end up outputting that as something that could be consumed by another program. So, but the rendering in Fusion is fantastic. So you could definitely get good renderings out of whatever you're making.
What are the output options, by the way?
Standard stuff like step files, SAT files, the generic 3D CAD output that you would find, you would normally expect to find. There are a few, there's also mesh output, so you could get STL or different types of mesh out of Fusion as well, if that's where you're consuming it. If that's what you need. You can
Cool.
you can get DWG out of Fusion. DXF. There's a few limitations. I don't recall. It depends on where you're getting them. So your mileage may vary exporting using DWG. But if you're expecting 3D DWG to come out of Fusion, then whatever consumes that will also consume a SAT file or a STEP file generally. So I would just stay with SAT or STEP, depending on what your consuming program likes the best.
Cool, thanks.
Yep. All right, well, that was a good question to get started out with. Let's see. Yeah, I still envision the day when, I think all of this really just, these different applications, they're important because nobody's that much of a generalist. Right. So people, they attach to the tool that's at the level where they're at. So Fusion is going to be machinists and welders and people who design, consumer products and things like that. But at the end of the day, all of these things live in a world, just like you mentioned, where there's everything around us is buildings, right? So if you were to do this, if you were to double click on a big map, imagine you're in Google Earth and you double click, and all of a sudden you're making your way down to where a building is, and then you double click again and you're looking at a model of the building, a digital twin of it. And then you double click again and you're on the roof where all the machinery is, and then you've got a big air conditioner that you could double click on, and now you're looking at a mechanical model of a machine. Like that sort of level of being able to drill into the data, it should be available. Now, I don't know how much it would be used, because that's kind of matrixy, right? Like, move, or what is it, the Minority Report, move, let me get into this model. And it's like, who's ever going to do that? But at the same time, these things are all connected, right? From the outer space view right down to the doorknob, I should know everything about the digital twin of this building, including the mechanical files. That's my personal view. I don't see any reason why we can't end up there. All right. So there, is there any other questions? I have a couple of things we can talk about in terms of the next release that's coming out, and also the AU, Autodesk University, that just happened.
I don't see anything in the chat at the moment.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Autodesk University a little bit. So you should be able to see my Autodesk University Design with just 12 commands page I just put up. Is that true? All right. Just fresh, couple, now I guess it's a couple weeks ago, in New Orleans, we had Autodesk University 2022, our first time meeting back in person in a couple of years. As usual, I was able to get a class onto the schedule. I worked with my normal partner in crime, Jeff Strader. So if you go into the Autodesk University, the backlog of all the recorded videos and just type my name in, you'll find that Jeff and I have done a number of classes together. And so I would recommend any one of those classes for people who are learning Fusion and have the time for a 1-hour deep dive on some of the subjects we've covered. We've covered performance, joints and motion. We've done, well, I mean, it's too many to mention, but this time we wanted to take a crack at a more basic way of like showing how people learn Fusion, and how if you're learning Fusion as a beginner, or maybe there's somebody on your team, that you could introduce them to the core principles of Fusion without overwhelming them with commands. So in my experience as a teacher, and Jeff and I's experience working with new users on the forum, which we've done for years and years now, it's people tend to show up to a new CAD program, which is another language, right? So they show up ready to use another language, but they want to sort of talk the language that they talk, right? So they're trying to do things that they would do in SolidWorks. They're trying to do things they would do in AutoCAD or Inventor. And it's a CAD application, so some of these concepts seem familiar, but it's really easy to get lost in the just piles and piles of commands. There's 1,400 something commands in Fusion, and they might share similar names to things that you think that they are, but then you're just fooling yourself if you think that, well, this will extrude here will work just like extrude does in every other application, for instance. So we made this class. We focused in on just 12 commands. I'll spoil it for you. We couldn't do it with 12. We put in the proposal for 12 commands, and then as we started working through it, we realized we really needed 3 more. So we got to a total of 15 commands. But in this class, we spent almost the whole time, a solid hour, actually modeling a design. And so if we go to this is the web page for it, and you should be able to get the link for that. Ignore here where it says there's no handout and presentation, because if you go to downloads, there actually is a handout and a presentation. And
I'll put the link in the chat for everyone.
Okay, and if you go to the handout, what you'll find is that it's an entire tutorial of how to make the thing that we made in the class. And I'm just quickly scrolling by here to show you that it's 76 pages of tutorial. So every single step along the way. And the other cool thing about this is that I went ahead and created an Autodesk gallery object. So this opens you up into the thing that's called our gallery.autodesk.com, where you can post your own models if you want to. Let's see if this thing will show. Yeah, it'll load up an LMV. You can post your own models, and people can do likes and things like that. And so I decided to put up the model for this class. So it has the class name. It has a video link to the video recording of it. So it's kind of a circular loop there. And you can also download the model. So if you want to see the model that we worked on in the class, which is this fun robot arm that totally moves and has all the actuators and everything working. If you want to download this, work your way through the tutorials, watch the class where we built about 2/3 of it. We ran out of time and skipped ahead on a couple of the repetitive steps, but it's all in the handout and it's all here in this model. So fun stuff. And it's a real pleasure to get to do another class in front of customers.
That's one I might take a look at. Hey, we did get a question in the chat here.
Okay.
Wondering when we can get emboss-like feature that works on non-cylindrical surfaces, similar to the flow along surface command in Rhino.
Well, that's a question for our that's a question for our PMs and the people who are developing Fusion. I understand what you're talking about. Do any of the other workflows, you know, there are workarounds for that besides using emboss. But I don't know of any improvements to emboss that are coming. I'm still sharing, right? So one of the things you could try would be joining the Fusion Insider community. Download the Insider build and work with it, and also you could get into you know, some of the discussion boards and ask questions there. If you're not getting what you need from the regular Fusion forum, you can talk to the Fusion Insider forum about those kind of requests. But I can show you some of the workarounds if you're interested.
Was Newman, did you want to? Yep, he says yes, I'd like to see it.
Okay. All right, well, so you're talking about a non-cylindrical surface, right? So let's create a non-cylindrical surface, first of all. So let's see, hold on, I'll do a spline. All right. Now, full caveat here, this could completely fail. So I'm not going to claim I've done this before. This is just my first inclination. If I had to do this and solve this problem for someone, this is exactly what I would do. So you're getting this live on the interweb, how I would approach this. So I first have created a non-cylindrical curved surface. Then I've created some way of sketching near that surface. So I'm going to sketch on the surface, and let's see. I'll draw something big enough, and that's not a regular shape, to cover this thing, and we'll actually even do what we can to get this across big chunks of curvature that go in different directions. And then what I could do is I could split the face, right? So if I use split face here and pick the tool, it'll split the face, and now I can do things like I can thicken. Let's see.
We have another comment from Phil. I'm sorry, Phil. Phil, we have another comment on this topic.
Okay.
It says, to be clear, I'm talking about something that is modeled flat and will flow to a non-cylindrical surface and conform to that surface.
Something that is modeled flat. Like, give me an example of something that is modeled flat and flows into a non-flat surface. I mean, without seeing something or a better description than that, I'm not sure I can answer that question. I mean, I'm showing you here that you could basically do this operation anywhere you needed to, which is to split the faces and then thicken them. How you split the faces depends on how you draw the information and get it in there. You'd have to use the same basic workflow to get the information to use any kind of emboss-like command that you're thinking of. So really the only thing that's different should be the last couple of steps here, where you use a different command to actually thicken it. But without a better description, I really don't know. You know, there's trillions of options according to the description so far. I don't have time, or not the time, I don't have the ability to envision trillions of options yet.
Okay. For example, import a part and then flow it to another surface. I'll follow up on the Insider forum. Okay, so you're gonna post that on the Insider forum. That might be a good one.
Okay,
Place to get more information.
Yeah, I mean, is there a command from another software that I could refer to that so I could see how Fusion does it?
He mentioned in his original question, flow along surface in Rhino.
Flow along surface in Rhino.
Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't anything like that in Fusion.
So maybe the insider forum would be a good place to
Yeah,
bring this up and get some more
yeah, definitely. You
discussion
know,
going.
bring some pictures, show an example of what you're trying to do. Another place to post that would be right on the regular community forum. You put that
Right.
on the design document and design and document pages and as a question, and you should get some responses from other Fusion experts. So I don't see this as being a direction that we're going to take with development. So what you need right now is a workaround, it sounds like. But again, as the safe harbor statement says, don't listen to me when it comes to the future state of Fusion. I just don't see this as being all that critical right now.
I'll put the link to the design and validate forum in the chat for you, so you can check there as well. And
Yep.
Between that and the insiders forum, maybe you can get some good discussions going and find a good workaround for what you're trying to do.
You'll get a great response from the community on the design and document forum page if you put pictures of what you want to do and throw in models, attached models of like where you would start. Like you mentioned importing a model and then somehow modeling with it. So if you include that kind of information, then that gives people something to chew on when they're answering.
I can imagine a lot of people would jump on that one and offer their suggestions.
Yeah. How do you model this in Fusion? You're gonna I'll tell you a persuasion technique when you're trying to get people to help you. Tell an expert that what you want is impossible, and it's okay if they don't have time. So as soon as you say it's okay if you don't have time, this is probably impossible, you'll get every one of them trying as hard as they can to solve the problem.
You'll probably get 5 different models back within a day.
Yep.
All right. So I think that's it in the chat for the moment.
Okay. All right. So the only other thing I wanted to talk about, I thought I'd mention that there's an update that's either going to be today or tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure when the update is coming, but it is imminent. The October update is here. It just depends on what the actual schedule is for releasing it at this point, and whether or not there's any unforeseen issues that they have to deal with on the way out the door. But I wanted to mention a huge update for Fusion, and it's seen right here. This is my really rudimentary exploration of what is called object properties. So does anybody notice something different about this Fusion drawing sheet? I'll give you a gold star to whoever knows what's different about this.
Drawing to notice.
Anyone on the call notice what's different? It's okay if you don't work with drawings. I'll spoil it for you here in just a second. It doesn't sound like anyone's going to answer. It's the fact that we have colors now. Right?
That's simple.
Colored ink. We have colored ink, and so I'll show you what it looks like. So here is a template, right? So I created a template by going to here and saying, I want to make a new drawing template. And when you make the new drawing template, now you don't have to do this only in the template, but the template's the best place to do this if you make lots of drawings. I'll change the document settings, and you'll see this document setting dialog here, and you can go through the tabs. So on the annotation tab, I can pick what line tapes, what thicknesses, and what color, and other other properties for these objects. And also notice that there's labels, notes. If I can get it to expand, pretty much every single drawing object that you can define in a Fusion drawing now has these properties that basically are line type, the width, and the color. You can also see you can control the visible lines, hatch lines. What do tables look like? What do your symbols look like? And of course, what do your title blocks look like? So this also, so that's the template, right? So you would want to use the template to make more drawings, for instance, in a production environment. But even so, once you get in here, you can also go through and, for instance, change. I don't know if that's a regular table. Hopefully, let's see if that works. Nope, that must be a different kind of table. Do I have a custom table? Here, I'll put a custom table right here. There we are. So custom table is in blue, right? So you can control any document after you've created it, or you can have a template here. So I'll show you what it's like. So this template has an assembly page and parts detail page. So right here, I'll make a drawing of this this is a classroom project. I will make a drawing of it. So new drawing from design. I will go ahead and pick out the template that's available and click OK. And then Fusion cracks open that template I was just showing you, and we'll produce a couple of drawing views in just a second. It does take a few seconds to load up AutoCAD, which is what Fusion is running in the background. We have big chunks of AutoCAD running our drawings, which should make it look a little familiar to those of you who have spent some time with AutoCAD. So now I have this automatically generated views and tables and things like dimensioning and so forth. Now it's just a matter of going through and doing your drafting. So there you have it. You can also send drawing properties or pull drawing properties from an existing sheet. So if you have older drawings, you can actually slurp up the document properties from newer documents to make older drawings look like they now look like as you've adopted this sort of color scheme type of approach here. Anyone who's really interested, there is a public, let's try that again. There is a mural that is a public mural, which is what this type of device is. And it's got our drawings roadmap updated 14th of October. So you can go in and look at stuff that our roadmap since 2015, 2016, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. And here's our roadmap for 2022 that we're working on. So if you're really into the drawings, you can get in here, and there's probably, I wonder if there's ways of, yeah, you can get connected and talk to people about drawings if it's a big passion of yours. But look for that improvement and the update that's imminent and poised for deployment at some point.
We have a question. Does a similar roadmap exist for modeling?
Not that I know of.
So any questions on that for anyone? No, so far no, other than the question about the similar roadmap.
Okay. Yeah, I don't, that's not, if there is, I haven't been exposed to it. I'm sure that there is some forward-looking stuff about modeling, but you know, kind of like what I was saying about the enhanced emboss or flow along surface type of work is that you know, it's the modeling commands in Fusion are pretty well established. The focus has been lately, it's been a lot on bug fixing and stability, and not necessarily just enhancing the modeling aspects of things. So you're going to see upcoming improvements like configurations that, it's modeling related, but it's also more about, making, it's more about workflows and things like that rather than making new shapes.
Awesome. That's good stuff.
Hey, Phil,
Yeah,
I got a question for you.
go ahead.
In your, I'm looking at your class, the AU class. How did you get to the gallery view?
How did I get to the gallery view?
Yeah,
So this right here,
exactly.
so it is in the handout. So if
Okay.
if you go to the downloads, it's supposed to be here under handout. So I'm going to have to bother them to somehow fix this. If they
I
don't-
got
if
you.
it
Okay.
doesn't, it should eventually end up here. But once you get to the handout, yeah, then this
And the
opens
link
up.
that's in there.
All right, that makes sense now. Well,
Yep, and then it's in the introduction. So we talk about the purpose of the class. We show the model. And then at some point we get down into like, hey, what are we doing here exactly? And there's that leads you to the Autodesk
Sweet,
gallery.
page
right there.
4.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome.
awesome.
And then it just picks up right where we did in the class. Shows you really step by step how to do the whole thing. But yeah, you end up with this model view here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I might have to do that one.
It's fun. So it combines really just a handful of sketching and modeling commands and also the commands for motion. So it really explores extrude dialog options. Believe it or not, there's a lot of this model exercises the extrude dialog from end to end. It really does try out almost every single option in there, and then also joints in motion, various ways of applying a joint. Like, do you model things in place and then add an as-built joint, which is something you can't do in other CAD programs, or do you model it out of place and then move it into place using a regular joint, or what we call a joint. We had fun with that one because we couldn't decide what to call it. There's an as-built joint. What's the regular joint? And so I just said we'll just call it a joint. But that's just a joke. It's not the official name of everything. But I think these are the essential 12 commands. If you're going to make anything more complicated than this, you had better know how that extrude dialog works, and you had better know how and when to apply joints and motion, because whether or not you need to position something and define the motion of it, or if it's already in place and only needs its motion defined. There's a lot of different thinking that goes into the tools in Fusion, and this model gets there very, very quickly without a bunch of extra noise and like things that are distracting, like a complicated other set of commands and workflows that don't really uncover that core of what's important in Fusion.
Well, I wish I could have been in the class, but I can always do it now. So the question was asked in the chat, and I put the answer in, but I'm going to just say it out loud anyway. Is this going to be posted on YouTube? And yes, the entire session is being recorded, and it will go on our channel on YouTube, correct, Sean? Eventually, yes. And it'll also be on the Community Conversations page for this session as soon as it's available.
Well, and you can watch the video if you want right here on this page.
I wasn't I thought he was referring to this recording, but he may have
Oh, the
been asking
recording
about
of
our
what
recording.
we're talking about. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm focusing
But
too much on the
the
class.
answer is yes. In either case, there's a recording for the class as well, for
Yeah.
the AU class. So
Yeah.
whichever recording you want, they're both available, or will be. So what else have you got for us today, Mr. Phil?
That's it. I've run out.
Okay. All right, let's have some questions. Who's got some questions for Phil? Dave, you joined us late. Did you have a reason, question that you brought into the room with you?
And hopefully they have a burning question. I mean, you got Phil, you got an expert here. Hit him with it. Make him squirm.
This is the guy who knows.
Yeah, I kind of swung and missed on that emboss command, but that's because I can't imagine something I can't see, unfortunately.
Right.
Hey, I'll throw something else out that's in the latest update. There's a new environment which is called Rubicon, to give you sort of a blue river water kind of experience. So
Ooh.
there you
It
go.
really makes your banana stand pop.
Yeah, it does work with the colors there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And let's see what it looks like if I put the layout grid on. Come on, layout grid. Go layout grid. So it actually even works with the layout grid. Normally I hate the layout grid with a passion, but in this environment it looks inviting.
Okay, you got a great question in the chat. What is the funnest favorite project you've modeled?
The funnest and favorite project I've modeled.
This is a question from Martin.
Yeah.
Sean did say to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's well, there's a couple. So let me see if I can find some images here. I'm gonna have to just bear with me while I poke around off screen here for just a second. Where would that be? Boo. I made like a robot ninja, so that was one of them. Not ninja, a robot Jedi.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that.
With working lightsaber, of course.
With a working lightsaber, yeah. So, well, here's one of my favorites. I've made when Eddie Van Halen died, I made a Gibson SG, and I had a buddy of mine make me some custom Eddie Van Halen artwork for it that I applied as a decal, and so I made an SG. Now, Eddie Van Halen, to my knowledge, never played a Gibson SG, so there's a little bit of irony here. But modeling the SG is harder than it looks. This thing is detailed to the point where it can be manufactured. I used diagrams that Gibson provides online, so it's sort of an open design. And as near as I could tell, it's mathematically accurate. You should be able to manufacture this and produce a working guitar that sounds a little bit like a guitar. So, you know, including models of various pickups and different sets of hardware and stuff. I did make the volume knobs all go to 11. So they definitely, you get a little bit of boost there. You can't hardly see it here, but the brand name is Philtone. So yeah, Philtone guitars. So that's just one thing I did, but also, you know, you can see I wound the strings on the tuning pegs. I did all of this in Fusion. It's pretty easy to do. It just took a lot of steps. You know, once you kind of work out a formula, it's just a 3D sketch and a sweep, and you connect it all together, and you got some strings at the end of that process. Let me see if I can find. So that one was a lot of fun. That took me a long time.
A good tribute to Eddie, though.
Yeah, he was a huge influence in terms of my musical tastes and stuff. Something else I did, project I did. Speaking of architecture, I do. My daughters do roller derby here in Portland, and so they were looking for ways of exploring what a design would be for a new place to do their practicing on a track like this, and also do events on a track like this. And so there's a standard layout for this. So it's about the size of a basketball court. So really any gym with a basketball court, you could just put some tape down the floor and have a roller derby bout anytime you want. But you can see I have models of the skaters. I have all the models of the stands. I labeled how many people sit in each section of stands, so that we could do space planning as well as you know, like capacity planning and stuff like that. My goal on the team this is a big nonprofit league. There's 500 people in this league, and so there's other engineers and people on this committee, and we were an all Autodesk team. So it was me using Fusion for conceptual layout, There was a mechanical engineer using Inventor to do the mechanical engineering. And then there was also our architect was using Revit, and she answered all of the architectural questions like, hey, can we even use this space? Do we need to have different permits for occupation? What's it going to take to, to retrofit this for seismic and stuff like that? So, but before we could make any really expensive qualified decisions, we had to know if it would fit. And so I made several conceptual models, and one of them was, what happens if we build one of these steel buildings? And so I showed a model of like, hey, if we built a steel building, how would we fit inside that thing? It turns out we would fit almost perfectly. It seems like it's almost too good to be true the way this thing is built. Here's another one with what does it mean to have two tracks side by side? And how much space is required and stuff like that. So, you have to answer questions like this in order to answer the big questions like, hey, what's available out on the commercial market? What would it cost to build this or to find it, right? And what could we get out of it if we did, in fact, get a space this large? So in this case, we would have two places to have, you could have a tournament where you have a game going on either one of these, or two different teams practicing at one time. So that was a lot of fun. We actually looked at maybe 15 or 20 properties. I just kept doing these over and over again because in Fusion, I mentioned, it's hard to have a library. Well, you can build your own libraries. I had folders and folders of roller derby assets, right? So it would have been all of these stands and all of these people and all of these little bits and pieces and the track and stuff. And I could just drag them onto into a new space that I could create very quickly. So that was a fun use of Fusion. We would go see a property in the morning, and by that afternoon, I could send everybody in the group a realistic impression of whether or not we wanted to pursue any more questions about that property. It's just, you're trying to fail fast. In other words, if you're not used to what fail fast means, fail fast is a mode in innovation where you try as hard as you can to fail because you don't want to put off the moment of failure until you've invested a whole bunch of time and energy in something. So you're trying as hard as you can to fail right up front. Anyway, so that was another one. I'm still looking for my Jedi robot, which I don't remember where I keep the pictures of. But anyway.
Martin says, aha, architectural building application, caught you.
Well, I said you could do it. I just didn't know, like, how do you communicate from there, right? I would have to
take it from there and take it into Revit.
Yeah. You want the model to be part of the permanent part of the story, and not copies on copies on copies of everything. I just can't find my robot Jedi. I don't know what I did with it.
How about 3D printing? How do you see this possibly growing and expanding in the future? Is there a roadmap, a big Minority Report vision?
Well, what does 3D printing need to do that it doesn't do already? I mean, we have, if you go to, I'm still sharing, right? So you go to your manufacturer workspace, and you have your whole additive section here, so you can do your 3D printing right down to editing every toolpath, as far as I know. I mean, you're creating toolpaths in G code, and you can trim and edit those things, so you can really be very, very specific about it. If you want to have full control over what's inside of your models, you can use the volumetric lattice, and you can set this up so that you can define all of your own infill. Hopefully Fusion's not crashing right now. This does take a little bit of brain power to get going. Come on, do it, Fusion. You can do it.
Nice to it.
Huh?
You have to talk nice to it.
I got to talk nice to it. Yeah. Well, I'm asking it to do some pretty complex stuff here. So I'm wondering if, I don't remember the last time I turned this on. So hopefully it recovers in just a second here after it's loaded up some fresh code. Well, let's wait for the program to respond. And so, I mean, while we're waiting for this to, oh, here we go. Come on, do something. There we are. So you can control the lattice right here in the model. So we can change the scale a little bit here. I don't know why this is. Let's just change this to make it smaller. There we are. You can affect the solidity of it, so you can make it less solid. You can also create an offset. So if you want to have a solid skin on anything, you could also do this. Thickness might only be, let's say, 3 millimeters. And I'll add another face to that. So you can define your infill right here. You know, it's really got a lot of control. So I'm just curious, like, what else does Fusion need to do for 3D printing? Maybe that would help me.
If you want to unmute Martin and share. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's good. I was just curious.
I'm just trying to track him.
Yeah,
Just trying to throw you off, Phil. Keep you on your toes.
Ask me about stuff I know less about. I'd see how this is. So yeah, I mean, I think this is really exciting. You know, anyone who's 3D printing in metal, for instance, right? This is the kind of control you need right here in the model, right? Rather than one step removed out in some print dialog and another software that's not connected to your design. I think this is really the way to go.
Well, do we want to flip it over and go through the closing?
We might as well. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully we answered everyone's questions. It's last call. If you got anything else you want to ask?
Anything burning? Any questions? Don't see anything coming in. All right, well then I'm gonna take the screen from you, Phil, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, let me stop sharing. There we go.
All right, and I will reshare my screen. So thanks, Phil, and thanks everybody else for joining us today. You got some interesting dialogue going on here. If you are interested in becoming a community conversation speaker, we'd like to hear some more from you. So you can connect with us by using the link here for our proposal. There's a QR code on the screen, and I'm going to put the link here in the chat if I can grab it, if it will let me. No, it's not going to let me. I will get you that link though. But you can use the QR code here and take a snapshot of that, and it'll take you directly to our proposal link, where if you have an idea for a class that you'd like to present, you can let us know what that is. We'd also like to see you throughout the community. Obviously, in our community forums is one of the main places where you can share your knowledge and you not only ask questions and gain new knowledge, but share the knowledge that you've already got with others. You can join us you can check out our community groups and look for a user group in your area if you're interested in joining a user group. You can check out our Community Voices blog, which is a blog written by the community for the community, where people are sharing their ideas, tips and tricks, workflows, career stories, pretty much whatever they'd like to talk about. We also have our Community Journal blog, which is a blog that's written by the community team for you with news, events, member spotlights, things about, we did a lot of coverage on AU, things like that. If you are or know a student, we have our student group hub. You can check that out or share the link with a student that you know. And as always, don't miss out on the next community conversation. Check out the link to our calendar, and I'm going to share a whole pile of links for you right now that have all of these things that I've just been talking about. And you can copy and paste these
and check them out at your leisure. But there are so many different ways that you can be involved in the Autodesk community and share your knowledge and gain from the knowledge of others. So with that, I want to thank everyone once again for coming. Thank you, Phil. Thanks, Sean, for helping out, and thank everybody else for joining in and asking questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. We're also adding one of Phil's sessions for November. It should go on the calendar today. So make sure
Awesome. Looking forward to that. And I did find the robot Jedi. So it's an industrial robot with lightsabers and tank tracks. But we'll have to leave that for the next one. So you'll have to come back and see it
in
then.
November. So if you want to see Phil's robot Jedi, come to the November session, and we'll make sure he puts that on the screen for you.
Spoiler alert, I've been told it's actually a Sith because I made the lightsaber red.
Ah, okay.
So I'm like, you know, maybe a Jedi likes a red saber, you know. I mean, I've got red glasses.
No,
I would want a red
Jedi sabers
lightsaber
are
to go with
blue.
my red glasses. So, you know, I mean, come on.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much.